There was a need for some political science, European, let's call it association or organization, enabling people from the various countries of Western Europe who are specializing in political science to know each other, and only with an organization of this kind would there be such a knowledge of these people. The idea was that what was important was to have meetings which were more than just A, to saying something and B, responding. That it was much more of a sort of genuine collaboration among people. And in order to achieve this, it appeared, it seemed to be absolutely necessary, and American experience seemed to show this, was to have meetings which lasted for fairly long periods, like several hours during the day, and during which people would exchange their habits, their tradition, and maybe have problems, maybe disagree with each other, so that there was some kind of family.
In many ways, I think ECPR, there's a psychological attachment that I detect amongst all the people I've met over the years about ECPR. ECPR is their home, it's their friend, it's where everybody comes to.
ECPR is special for me in one respect, that it allows people who attend its events to really connect. There is more time at ECPR events to really create communities. It becomes more of a family than just a set of events.
It's my family. It's my academic family. It's the conferences, it's the journals, it's all the other activities. And I've grown up with ECPR since the very beginning of my career.
Then, as you got organized, several things happened. First of all, the great breakthrough was Rudolf Wildermann in the joint workshops.
I think by introducing the joint sessions, having it the first conference, the ECPR really set the stage.
Without ECPR, I wouldn't have the network that I have. And I think back to the first full-fledged workshop I went to, which was a workshop in Limerick with the Katz and Mayer political parties group. I met the people who became my network for the rest of my career. I'm still collaborating with people I met at that workshop today.
The ECPR has created a profession, and it provides multiple resources to network people on scales and with priorities as they emerge.
It's not just a superficial organization. It's about building talent, building scholarship through the generations and across borders.
Once we got by the late 70s, we knew it was a success, and when the foreign money stopped, we knew we were the object was to become self-sustaining.
So the ECPR, as a publisher of journals, has become increasingly important. It used to be just the European Journal of Political Research. That has grown in stature and has become a leading world journal.
I think it's incredibly important to have a wide stable of journals for a professional association such as the ECPR, because it reaches out to a range of colleagues across the discipline.
The most important thing that has happened to ECPR is that it has grown. I mean, it started as a very small organization, a few institutions, a few activities. And if you look at what it is now, 50 years later, it has become such a big organization with such a variety of events, of possibilities for training, for publication. All scholars in political science in Europe and outside of Europe are in one way or another constantly involved in things that are being organized or have been initiated by ECPR.
I experienced the period when, after the 2004-2007 enlargement, and there was this enormous inflow of people from the East. It was really a pleasure to see this inflow of new people, particularly students and also colleagues.
I think with ECPR is an ideal place where people from the European South and European East meet with the West.
Personally, for me, ECPR is very important. I mean, I'm European, I work in Canada, but my main research is based on Europe. So this really allows me to keep a network, to build a network in Europe, to be active in Europe, and to bridge like my working place with the place I do research.
When I first started in the executive committee, we were monitoring the attendance of female students and scholars in all the events. And there was already this sense, was not necessarily affirmative action, but there was an attention.
There is not only gender. We know there is also other kind of scholars, other types of scholars who also suffered from barriers to enter into the family of ECPR, into the profession in general. And here I'm thinking about minority scholars coming from some part of Eastern Europe, scholars in all sorts of vulnerable positions. And I think the ECPR there too can really learn for all what we have done toward gender equality to now move to a much more inclusive way of interacting.
There are close to 60 standing groups and research networks right now, which means that basically every sub-discipline or smaller subject is organized as a standing group within ECPR.
I believe the standing groups are the air in the lungs of the ECPR. So you need both. You need the lungs, the infrastructure, which enables the breathing, but you need the air. And this air, this life in the ECPR, it's the standing groups. It's where people come together, where they share interests, where they share information, where they plan and do activities.
This standing group was really, for me, he has changed my life in the sense that, of course, he was a lot of great research on gender and politics, and then we added later on research on sexuality, but it was also like a platform to innovate.
I think we're in the middle of a revolution there, and that 10 years from now, this whole business and world and practice and procedures of publications will be completely different.
So somehow it's always the case with big changes is that there is a lot of opportunities, but there is also quite a few challenges that I think we need to pay a lot of attention to in order to make sure that this move towards a broader sharing of knowledge does not exclude a group of scholars and a range of fantastic research that could not get funded via the usual research schemes.
The challenge is also how do we bring people together and connect with each other without actually physically being face to face.
It's very important, particularly in political science, because politics is very much a subject of people who talk to each other, and because of talking to each other, they may or may not like each other. And it seemed very important that people who are specializing on this should speak to each other as to realize whether in other parts of the country or in a different country, the views or the approaches or the aspects of the problem were somewhat different.
We study political science, but we also live in the times when democracy is decaying worldwide, and academic freedoms are one of the first victims of the autocratic tendencies of illiberal populists. And so we are at the same time kind of studying ourselves. I think this is the most important thing for people, for scholars facing perils, is to give them this hope that you still belong, we still count with you, you are part of our community.
If I may not just make a forecast, but express a wish, it would be for the ECPR to achieve something which I think it has not achieved yet completely, at least. That is to make political science really crucial also for governments, to make it into a science that is listened to, that is consulted. And so that is my wish for the ECPR 10 years down the line, to make political scientists much more relevant in public debates, in helping governments become and stay more democratic.